February 1942. We were living in a very large home which had been converted to 4 apartments, 2 upstairs, 2 down. We had a great big enormous deck that ran all the way across this real high ceilinged building. So we were 4 blocks from the ocean, okay? We can't see the ocean because it's down low. The trees are in the way. So my brother and I are laying on our floor listening to the radio and looking at some papers. And my dad says, "Get out here." Out on the deck. "Get out here now." And we got up and we went out to the back deck. So right above the horizon of all the trees and stuff and buildings is this dot, a white dot, just there, and like it's got to be some aircraft flying in to come over and land at the airbase. But it's not moving. It's just a bright dot. And off of this dot, to the left, is a little beam. It's like a pencil beam, but you can see it. This is out over the ocean, like maybe inside the breakwater, because we couldn't see the ocean. We don't know how far out it is. It could have been 10 miles out. What in the world is that? So we're watching it for about 5 minutes, and then there was a flash, brilliant flash into our eyes. It lit up the trees, the back, the side of the everything. It got lit up. And it went out, and we looked and looked and looked, and everything was gone. Nothing else. So we went to bed. 12:30 at night, the anti-aircraft guns started firing. What we're talking about is this fantastic situation, the Los Angeles event, the Battle of Los Angeles, okay? The anti-aircraft guns all started firing. We go outside. Here's this massive thing right above us, this big, right above us, maybe 7,000 feet. The anti-aircraft shells are blowing up on the bottom of it, all around it. There's 8 searchlights, all focused on this as they're shooting at it. And of course, nothing is happening. And it parks there for an hour and a half. While it's parked, hundreds of different types of vehicles, most of them circular, but some cigar-shaped large ones, came in underneath, being fired on, where they're still trying to shoot this thing down. They came around them, they came over them, till all night long. Now, it got boring after a while, so we went to bed at 3 o'clock. I don't know how it gets boring, okay? We went to bed at 3 o'clock. Now, when it started, everybody came outside. All of us are standing there watching this event. And now, what was not published was that the breakwater is full of Navy ships who used up all of their ammunition that 5-hour period. Not just the coast artillery who used up all of their ammunition. Okay? Your whole 2 Pacific navies, the Eastern Navy and the Western Navy, used up all their ammunition. They finally quit, of course, just before daylight, and everybody went back inside. But from the standpoint of all of us out there watching this, nobody got a heart attack. Nobody got sick. Nobody got scared. Nobody got frightened. On the other side of the planet, London was being bombed by the Germans, and they're trying to get into shelters. We had a 5-hour war, except they didn't shoot at us. But nobody got sick. The only persons who were actually wounded was from shrapnel, couple of guys actually were killed. Almost 1 million people in California watched an event for 5 hours of a massive extraterrestrial battle group that came over California with a mission.
Well, this is obviously one of the great classic events in UFO lore, something that just can't be covered up. Did you ever hear about or read about this battle on the smart glass pads or in any of the briefings that you had on the inside?
I read that it had occurred. The only thing that I saw that wasn't reported here is that during the same time period, we did recover a non-terrestrial craft from the ocean in that general vicinity.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if that would have been one of these smaller craft he saw or the large one. To me, it seemed as though they were unaffected by the anti-aircraft.
But it is possible that one of them took a stray hit or something and landed in the ocean.
It could be, or the Battle of LA craft and these other craft that sound like came out of it could very well have been searching for, it might have been a rescue operation. You know, there's a number of things that could have been. They could have been probing our defenses or maybe making a point to some of our leaders after a recent meeting.
Well, let me run this idea by you. This is something I discussed on Wisdom Teachings. It's worth repeating and getting your thoughts. If you go back to Fatima, Portugal, right after Portugal enters into World War I, which is this horrible, devastating thing where tens of millions of people are dying ultimately, you have these kids who start to be in contact with what appear to be spiritual beings that ultimately leads to a mass sighting of a silvery disc in which 90,000 people witnessed this thing. And then they're soaked in rain, but when the whole thing's over, they were miraculously dry. The craft appears to shoot rainbow colors all over the sky. 90,000 witnesses, that would have been the end of the cover-up if it had happened in our times.
Right, and 1 million people seeing this in Los Angeles and sounds like Long Beach and other areas. You know, today with everyone having an iPhone, it would be over.
So do you think it's possible that both the Fatima sightings and the Battle of LA could be benevolent groups that are showing us these things as we enter into war to try to steer us away from warfare, perhaps?
It very well could be, because with their technology, they could have flattened the whole city with very little effort. So they were obviously not there for some sort of offensive operation. Maybe an intelligence operation, rescue, recovery operation, or there to make a point. But I really don't know exactly why this incident occurred. It's according to what I've heard, there was some treaty signed that this type of open sighting by open mass sighting is against a treaty. So
right.
There had to have been a good reason why it happened.
Now, we've heard from guys like Benjamin Fulford and some of his disclosures that he was told by Pentagon insiders that 75% of all the production money for Hollywood films is coming from the Pentagon through various backdoor firms. So let me just ask you first if you have ever heard anything like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of money from the DOD and Pentagon is going in for propaganda.
So why do you think the Battle of Los Angeles movie would be made? Do you think maybe they're confusing people's Google search so that they're going to find this movie instead of any real information?
Well, they know that that was a very significant occurrence UFO-wise in American history. You know, nearly a million people saw it.
Right.
So it was already in our consciousness. So that's a tool for them. And they being the military, different military intelligence groups, are trying to spin the narrative that all of these beings coming in are negative and that they are here to invade. And this one obviously wasn't, because it didn't attack.
Do you think maybe creating a movie with the same title blocks people from finding the original incident at all?
It could do that, or it could just put the whole sci-fi spin on it to where, people will, we're already programmed to roll our eyes anytime we hear anything alien or UFO. That's probably part of that effort.
I was fortunate enough at one of my conferences to have a woman stand up who was a little girl during the time that this happened, witnessed the entire thing, and it was quite fascinating. We let her speak for some time to the audience. It was quite spontaneous. But the point is, 1 million people is a lot of witnesses. It's kind of amazing that we still have a UFO cover-up after something like that.
Yes, but the propaganda and the programming that has come from these intelligence groups has been very effective. So, there's a good chance that if something like that happened today and we didn't get photos, that a lot of the people that witnessed it themselves would, after a few days, be like, oh, no, that didn't happen, or just forget about it and move on.
Well, another interesting thing regarding the Battle of Los Angeles is the War of the Worlds broadcast. The original broadcast with Orson Welles was in 1939, but then when the movie came out, it was after this had happened, and we have multiple eyewitnesses saying that the craft that you see in the War of the Worlds movie is very similar to the one in Battle of Los Angeles, except that it has a little periscope on the top. So why do you think they would actually put the real craft into the movie?
Well, they're always hiding things in plain sight. So if you were to see something similar to War of the Worlds, I mean, you're on some level you might be willing to discount it, thinking, oh, that's military, or that's some concept that's being used for a movie. You're going to jump to that instead of aliens automatically. That's possible.
Well, do you think also that putting those exact same craft into War of the Worlds, where they become hostile attackers instead of peaceful demonstrators, could be like a form of mass mind control?
Well, sure. If you see a certain craft design and see it destroying cities in a movie, well, if you see it in real life, what are you programmed to think? They could be coming, down to say hello and maybe give you a ride and show you, around the solar system, but you've been programmed to run and hide because you think that it's an invasion.
Exactly. Do you think it's possible that we could have another mass demonstration like that at some point? That there could be another event like that if, for example, this Muhammad Treaty gets overturned?
Absolutely. If the treaty that's supposed to prevent that is overturned, there are a lot of non-terrestrials that want to be up in the sky in overpopulated areas to let us know that they're here.
Now, you also mentioned in some of your recent briefings that both the SSP Alliance and the Cabal are concerned about the possibility of wreckage crashing into a major American city. So just real briefly, since we're talking about these battles in the air, what are they thinking would happen and how would that play out on the world stage?
Well, they're afraid that some of their weapons platforms that are that have been up in orbit and advanced craft could possibly fall into a populated urban area with all of the activity that's going on up there. There are shoot downs happening. So they are ready to pounce on any crash. They have cover stories in place saying this was a satellite, nuclear-powered satellite that crashed. It's contaminated a large area, so stay in your homes or leave the city. And then they will focus on cleaning up the debris.
So this is something that they're actually very concerned about.
Absolutely. I've heard a number of times that they're worried.
Are there more battles happening in our atmosphere now than there were before between these cloaked craft?
Yes, it's kind of reached a crescendo in recent times. There are human-piloted craft fighting each other, human-piloted craft fighting non-terrestrials, and different non-terrestrial groups that are having skirmishes.
So what would we expect if they tried to cover this up? What would be the kind of headlines we'd see or the stories we'd hear?
Just like the example I just gave, that some sort of secret satellite had crashed or something like that. They're not going to say a UFO
or
crashed.
A nuclear event, maybe a nuclear waste dump or spill or
test craft.
Chemical emission, something like that.
Right, something that's going to scare people
Right.
like some sort of disease or, any number of things.
All right, well, you saw it here first. This is Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock, here with Corey Good, and we're reviewing footage from William Tompkins. Absolutely mind-blowing stuff. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.
Up and we went out to the back deck. So right above the horizon of all the trees and stuff and buildings is this dot, a white dot, just there, and like it's got to be some aircraft flying in to come over and land at the airbase, but it's not moving. It's just a bright dot, and off of this dot to the left, two down, we had a great big enormous deck that ran all the way across this real high ceilinged building. So we were 4 blocks from the ocean. Okay, we can't see the ocean because it's down low. The trees are in the way. So my brother and I are laying on our floor, listening to the radio and looking at some papers. And my dad says, "Get out here, out on the deck. Get out here now." And we got out. February 1942. We were living in a very large home which had been converted to 4 apartments, 2 upstairs. Left is a little beam. It's like a pencil beam, but you can see it. This is out over the ocean, like maybe inside the breakwater, because we couldn't see the ocean. We don't know how far out it is. It could have been 10 miles out. What in the world is that? So we're watching it for about 5 minutes, and then there was a flash.